Ross Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My views on Brexit are well known, and as a prominent campaigner for Scottish Vote Leave, my views were well known by my constituents before I ever got elected to this House. But I respect that colleagues and other MPs have very different views, often very genuinely and very passionately held. And I hope that regardless of those deeply held views, that we can all agree that we all want what is best for this country. Mr. Speaker, did you know that the number of people who voted Leave in Scotland is similar to the populations of those living in the cities of Glasgow and Edinburgh put together? Scotland's two largest cities, with over 1 million Scots having voted to leave the EU. Yet, in both this place and in the Scottish Parliament, they have been wholly underrepresented. And there is a growing frustration and anger amongst Scottish Leave voters that they have been airbrushed out of Scotland's story by the narrative of some that Scotland voted to remain, and that is Scotland's voice. Well, Mr. Speaker, I will not be airbrushed out of here. And the national newspaper can attack me and bully me as much as it wants. People can vandalise my office as much as they want, protest outside it as much as they want. But I will never, ever give up speaking for the 1 million Scots who voted to leave the European Union. Mr. Speaker, I'm not just a Brexiteer, but I am a committed, dedicated and most passionate unionist first. Our United Kingdom is something that we have built together, and the ties that bind us go beyond the nations to individuals. For over 300 years we've traded together, we've fought for freedom and peace together, and we have built our lives together. That is why in 2014, in that Scottish independence referendum, I campaigned with my head, heart, body and soul to keep this United Kingdom together. And it is because I am a Scottish unionist, Mr. Speaker, that I cannot in all good conscience support this withdrawal agreement. I share the concern of other colleagues and those in the DUP that the backstop arrangement would mean hiving off Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, with Northern Ireland being kept in a separate regulatory regime. Northern Ireland would be left in the single market for goods and agri-foods whilst Great Britain leaves. An arrangement that would give Brussels more say over rules in Northern Ireland than our own United Kingdom Parliament. The backstop would require that Northern Ireland follows around 300 EU regulations. And if the UK were to diverge from one, it means a border down the Irish Sea. If the EU changes any, and the rest of the UK does not follow, despite having no say over those changes, it would impose a border down the Irish Sea. Northern Ireland will be left in full harmonisation with the EU. Now, I have heard the Chancellor for the Duchy of Lancaster and other ministers say that to avoid that border down the Irish Sea, that Great Britain would align with Northern Ireland. But what does that mean in practice, Mr. Speaker? That means that the UK is tied to EU rules that it is voiceless to change or oppose. That would not be taking back control. That is just the opposite of what people voted for and is worse than the current arrangement. Mr. Speaker, the prosperity of our union is dependent on our own internal market and the thousands of jobs that depend on it. Therefore, any barriers that are put in the way of that affect our ability to trade within the United Kingdom are hugely damaging. Therefore, I struggle to comprehend how anyone who believes the integrity of the UK can support a deal that would keep Northern Ireland in the single market. How could anyone want to see new burdens, new regulations put in place in the Irish Sea, trading east to west? That means goods being manufactured in my constituency of Aberdeen South, which move to Belfast, would be subject to new customs declarations and the issuing of certificates, new barriers to trade within our own country. Now, I do recognise that there has been an attempt by the government to address these very real concerns and that they have brought forward new measures. But, Mr Speaker, it's with regret that I feel that these measures do not go far enough. What I read today felt more like a PR exercise rather than a real remedy to the problem. The backstop arrangement will be part of an internationally binding treaty. That means, by its very nature, it supersedes any legal domestic provisions. Further, it has failed to hold true to what was agreed in the joint report of December 2017. So, to coin a phrase, Mr Speaker, nothing has changed. This withdrawal agreement does protect the Union, the European Union, sadly not our own. But, Mr Speaker, there are wider concerns with the withdrawal agreement. The backstop means that we could be trapped in the EU indefinitely, with EU27 having a veto. We would be unable to strike our own trade deals. Advice from this very House of Commons EU legislation team is that the backstop customs arrangement would be, and I quote, a practical barrier to the UK entering separate trade agreements on goods with third countries. As a Scot, I know that one of our greatest exports is Scottish whisky. Its global reputation for quality is absolutely unmatched. The industry has been optimistic about the opportunities presented by Brexit to sell that product into the exciting and new growing markets in the world. But the withdrawal agreement recognises and protects over 3,000 GIs. Now, this agreement isn't a trade deal. In fact, we can't even talk trade. But within the withdrawal agreement, the UK is protecting EU GIs such as Parma ham and feta cheese. This has the potential to stop us from reaching free trade agreements with the US or India, which are the big markets for Scottish whisky. In trade deals, we need to protect our own GIs, not the EU's. Further, the US Ambassador, Woody Johnson, has clearly stated that if this withdrawal agreement is passed, then it doesn't look like it would be possible to agree a bilateral UK-US trade deal. Lastly, Mr Speaker, we have to pay £39 billion to the EU. Do you know that that is £1,400 per family here in the UK? For that amount of money, ordinary taxpayers should rightly feel that they aren't getting very much for that. Mr Speaker, I recognise that in a negotiation one side doesn't get everything that it wants and the other side gets nothing. However, nowhere in this agreement can I see something that the UK has achieved as a significant concession. Unbelievably, the EU appears to have everything that it wants, which is why it's therefore little wonder that the EU Commission is claiming that the power is with them, that it is their mission to prove that leaving the EU doesn't work. So in conclusion, Mr Speaker, yes, Brexit is an unprecedented challenge for our country, and it requires a national effort to meet that challenge. But Brexit is not an existential threat to our union, which is why I'm horrified that before us is a deal which leaves Northern Ireland behind, that treats it like a foreign territory. I simply will not stand by and allow our United Kingdom to be broken up by the back door. No unionist can ever accept that. The Conservative and Unionist Party cannot accept that. The UK Parliament cannot accept that, which is why MPs must vote down this deal. Thank you.